Let me tell you something. There are moments in life that split everything into a before and an after. A moment so sharp, so humiliating, so completely unexpected that it cracks you right open in front of everyone. And the worst part? It happened at what was supposed to be the happiest dinner of my life. The night my boyfriend got down on one knee. The night I said yes. The night I found out it was all just a bet. My name is not important. What's important is that you stay right here with me, because by the time I finish this story, you are going to understand exactly why revenge is not just something you feel, it's something you build, slowly, quietly, with a smile on your face and a plan in your heart. So let me take you back to about 14 months before everything fell apart. That's when I met Daniel. And before you say anything, yes, I know how it sounds now. But back then, Daniel was everything I thought I wanted. He was funny in that effortless way that makes you laugh before you even realize the joke is over. He was tall, broad-shouldered, had this deep voice that made even ordinary sentences sound like they meant something. He worked in marketing, always dressed like he knew exactly what he was doing, always had a plan. I was 26, working as a junior graphic designer at a mid-size agency, and I was just starting to feel like my life was finally coming together. And then here comes Daniel, sitting across from me at a mutual friend's birthday gathering, looking at me like I was the most interesting thing in the room. We dated for 11 months before the proposal. 11 months that felt like something out of a movie I'd chosen specifically for myself. We traveled together twice, once to a little coastal town about 4 hours away, and once to visit his family upstate. We cooked dinner on Sunday nights. We fought sometimes, sure, small things, but we always came back around. He made me feel safe. He made me feel chosen, and that, I think, is the most dangerous feeling in the world when the person making you feel it doesn't actually mean it. I need to tell you about Simone before I go any further, because this story doesn't work without her. Simone was Daniel's first love. They dated all through college, 3.5 years, and from what Daniel told me, they ended things mutually, maturely, both moving in different directions. That was the version he gave me. The real version, I would learn later, was that Simone had ended it, that Daniel had been absolutely wrecked by it, and that some part of him had never really let it go. I had met Simone exactly twice before the proposal. Once at a work event of Daniel's where I didn't even know she'd be there, and once at a group dinner with friends. Both times she was perfectly cordial, maybe even warm, the kind of woman who is so effortlessly beautiful and socially graceful that you can't even hate her for it. You just feel slightly dimmer standing next to her. She had this natural confidence, like she never once questioned whether she belonged in the room. I told Daniel, after the second time I met her, that I thought she was lovely. He agreed too quickly. I noticed that. Filed it somewhere in the back of my mind and didn't open the drawer again. I should have. Now the proposal. Daniel had told me he wanted to plan a special dinner, just the two of us, at this restaurant downtown that I'd mentioned wanting to try for months. It was one of those places with soft lighting and jazz playing, just low enough that you could still have a real conversation. I wore a burgundy dress I'd bought 2 months earlier for exactly this kind of occasion. I did my hair. I was nervous in the best possible way, the way that feels like champagne bubbles in your chest. I remember looking at myself in the mirror before we left and thinking, this is it. This is the beginning of the next chapter. Dinner was perfect. We talked, we laughed, we ordered dessert we didn't even need. And then Daniel got quiet in that particular way that men get quiet when they're working up to something. My heart was absolutely hammering. He reached into his jacket pocket. He got down on one knee right there between the tables, and he said, "And I will remember these words until the day I leave this earth," he said. "You are exactly what my life needed. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he even finished the sentence. The whole restaurant clapped. A woman at the table next to us started crying. The waiter brought us complimentary champagne. I was shaking. I couldn't stop looking at the ring. I couldn't stop looking at him. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. We stayed for another hour just floating in it, and then Daniel suggested we stop by a nearby bar where some of his friends were gathered, just to celebrate, just to share the news. I thought that was the sweetest thing. I thought he'd planned it. I thought he wanted to show me off. What I walked into was something else entirely. The bar was loud. The kind of casual place with exposed brick and mismatched stools. And Daniel's friends were already a few drinks deep when we arrived. I recognized most of them. There was Marcus, his college roommate. There was Priya and her boyfriend. There was a couple I knew vaguely from a barbecue last summer. And there, sitting right in the middle of the group, was Simone. She looked up when we walked in, and something passed across her face that I didn't have the vocabulary for yet. But I would learn it soon enough. It was the look of someone who has just watched a chess piece move exactly where she expected it to go. I showed everyone the ring. People hugged me. There were cheers. Daniel was grinning ear to ear. And then, as the night went on, and the drinks kept flowing, and I stepped away for a few minutes to go to the restroom, the universe decided it was time for me to know the truth. The bathroom in that bar was down a narrow hallway, and on my way back, I stopped because I heard my name. Not shouted, murmured. But when you hear your own name in a voice that sounds strange, you stop. You listen. You don't even decide to, your body just does it. It was Marcus talking, and he was talking to Simone. And what I heard, standing in that dim little hallway with my champagne still buzzing in my bloodstream and my engagement ring catching the low light, was this. I still can't believe he actually did it. And Simone, laughing softly, said, I told him he wouldn't. He never could resist a challenge. And Marcus said, so what happens now? He actually has to go through with it? And Simone said, oh, I'm sure he'll figure it out. She seems like the type who won't make it difficult. She seems like the type who won't make it difficult. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, maybe longer, just replaying what I'd heard. Trying to find an innocent interpretation. Trying to make it mean something else, but there wasn't another meaning. There was only the one that was currently dismantling every single thing I thought I knew about the last 11 months. I walked back out to the group. I smiled. I sat down next to Daniel. I let him put his arm around me and kiss my temple, and I laughed at whatever jokes someone was making, and I stayed for another 45 minutes, because I am, if nothing else, someone who finishes what she starts. On the drive home, I waited. I waited while he talked about how great the night was. I waited while he said how happy he was. I waited until we were inside our apartment, until he was relaxed and unsuspecting, and then I said very calmly, tell me about the bet. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. He tried first to pretend he didn't know what I was talking about. Then he tried to minimize it. Then, when he realized neither of those was going to work, he told me. He and Simone had apparently kept in touch more than I knew. A few months into our relationship, at some gathering I hadn't attended, Simone had made a comment about Daniel always playing it safe, settling, not being someone who could really commit. She'd said, casually, dripping with that effortless confidence of hers, that she'd bet he'd never actually propose to someone like me. Someone so steady, someone so, and this was the word he used when he quoted her, someone so boring. And Daniel, rather than walking away, rather than defending me, rather than showing even the smallest amount of loyalty to the woman he was supposedly building a life with, had said, watch me. That was the proposal. That was the ring on my finger. That was the man on one knee in a restaurant while strangers cried happy tears. It was a performance staged to win an argument with a woman he'd never actually gotten over. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I took the ring off very slowly and set it on the kitchen counter, and I said, I think you should sleep somewhere else tonight. And he did. Because even then, even in that moment, he could see there was no version of what he just admitted that ended with things being okay. Now here's where some people would close this chapter and just walk away. And I understand that, truly, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just leave and let your peace be the revenge. But I am not, as Simone so generously observed, boring. And I had an idea. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't post anything. I didn't call his mother or blast the group chat. I went quiet. And going quiet, when everyone expects you to fall apart, is its own kind of power. I gave myself 2 weeks to grieve. Actually grieve, not perform grief, not use it as a weapon. Just sit with it and feel how badly it hurt and let it hurt. I cried. I called my best friend and told her everything. I ate bad food and watched good television, and I let myself be sad because I had earned the right to be sad. But I also, in those 2 weeks, started planning. First thing I did was call my agency and ask about the internal promotion that had come up 3 months earlier. The one I'd talked myself out of applying for because Daniel had casually said it sounded like too much travel, too much pressure, maybe not the right time. I called and I asked if the position was still open. It was. I applied. I got it. Second thing I did was reach out to a friend of a friend, a woman named Cleo, who worked in event coordination and had connections to a lot of the same social circles Daniel moved in. Cleo was the kind of person who knew everyone and remembered everything and would, if you were lucky enough to be in her good graces, occasionally share what she knew. I took Cleo to lunch. I didn't ask her for anything directly. I just let her talk. And within an hour, I had learned that Simone had been considerably more involved in Daniel's life throughout our entire relationship than I had ever been led to believe. Regular check-ins, shared inside jokes, a whole ongoing conversation that I had been entirely excluded from while being the person he came home to every night. I want to be very clear about something here. My revenge was never about being petty. It was never about humiliation for its own sake. It was about truth. It was about making sure that the story got told correctly, because the version Daniel and Simone were operating from, the version where I was the boring placeholder who would quietly disappear and make things easy for everyone, that version needed a revision. I started showing up differently. Not for them, for me, but also, let's be honest, absolutely for them. I started saying yes to the invitations I'd been quietly declining because Daniel found them boring. Art show openings, a photography class I'd been eyeing for over a year, a weekend trip with my girlfriends that I'd postponed 3 times. I started filling my life back up with the parts of myself I'd slowly been setting aside to fit into the shape of someone Daniel found convenient. And I looked incredible doing it. Not because I was trying to make him jealous, though I won't pretend that wasn't a small and satisfying side effect, but because there is something genuinely radiant about a woman who has decided she is done shrinking. The moment of reckoning came about 6 weeks after everything had happened, at a mutual friend's engagement party. Yes, I know, the irony. I was invited, I RSVP'd, yes, and I showed up in a green dress that I will not describe in detail because I don't want to brag, but I will say that multiple people asked me who I was wearing, and I had to explain that it was just something I already owned. Daniel was there. Simone was there. And here is what I had that neither of them expected. I had my dignity completely intact. A new job title I'd quietly let slip to exactly the right people in the week leading up to the party, and absolutely zero intention of making a scene. I greeted people warmly. I congratulated the newly engaged couple with genuine happiness because their love was real and they deserved to be celebrated. I laughed. I danced a little. I had a glass of wine and then switched to sparkling water because I wanted to be fully present for every single second of what was coming. What was coming was not a confrontation. It was something quieter and, I think, more devastating. It was Simone approaching me. She came over with that smile, the one that's warm on the surface and calculates at the edges, and she said something along the lines of how she hoped I was doing well and that she'd heard I had a big new role. And I looked at her, and I smiled back, completely genuinely, and I said, I really am. It's amazing what becomes possible when you stop making yourself smaller for someone who was never in your corner to begin with. She didn't have an answer for that. Not a real one. And then, because the universe occasionally has a sense of theater, Daniel appeared at her elbow. He looked at me, and then at her, and then back at me, and he said my name in that careful way people use when they're not sure what version of you they're dealing with. And I said, warmly, brightly, with every ounce of the grace I had spent 6 weeks rebuilding, Daniel, congratulations, by the way. I hear you two finally stopped pretending the bet was just about me. I will never forget the color that left his face. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I turned back to the friend I'd been speaking with before they'd approached, and I picked up the conversation exactly where we'd left off, and I did not look back. Here is what I need you to understand, because this is the part that actually matters. The revenge was real, but it was never the point. The point was me. The point was realizing that I had spent 11 months in a relationship that was, from at least one side of it, a performance, and that somewhere along the way I had started performing too. Performing easy, performing low maintenance, performing someone who didn't ask too many questions or take up too much space or want too many things. Boring. He said I was boring. She said I was boring. And you know what? Maybe the version of me who existed in that relationship was a little dimmed. Because that's what happens when you're with someone who doesn't actually want all of you. You start editing. You start turning down the volume. You start leaving the most interesting parts of yourself off the table because you sense, even if you can't name it, that they won't be welcomed. The woman who showed up to that engagement party was not boring. She was terrifying in the best possible way, because she had absolutely nothing left to lose and had discovered, in losing it, exactly how much she actually had. I want to say something to whoever is watching this and feeling like they're in a version of this story right now. Maybe you're not engaged. Maybe it's not a bet. Maybe it's just someone who makes you feel like you're too much or not enough, who makes you feel like the parts of you that light you up are somehow inconvenient, who makes you feel like the best version of yourself is the quietest one. I want you to hear this. That feeling is information. That feeling is a door, and you have every right to walk through it. The promotion, by the way, is going incredibly well. I'm traveling to 3 different cities this quarter for client work, something the old me would have apologized for. My photography class produced a series I'm genuinely proud of. My weekends belong to me entirely, and I am filling them in the most gloriously unboring ways imaginable. Daniel, from what I hear through the inevitable grapevine of shared social circles, is still figuring things out. I don't know what happened with Simone. Honestly, I don't need to know. That story is theirs now. Mine is mine. And my story, it turns out, is nothing like boring. It's the story of a woman who got proposed to as a punchline and turned it into a plot twist. It's the story of finding out who you are when someone tries to reduce you to who they need you to be. It's the story of a ring left on a kitchen counter, and a green dress at a party, and a single sentence delivered to 2 people who fully deserved it. It's the story of me deciding, quietly and completely, that I am exactly enough. Actually, let me correct that. I am more than enough, and now I have the receipts to prove it. If this story hit different for you, if it made you feel something, please leave a comment below, because I read every single one and your words genuinely mean the world to me. Give this video a thumbs up if you think she got exactly what was coming to her, you know who I mean. Subscribe if you're new here, because there are more stories where this came from, and I promise you, none of them are boring. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, queens.